Good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin. Welcome to the ESP32 product creation journey. On today's stream, we're going to be talking about right to repair and open versus closed source. And this is something that I've gotten emails about, people in the Discord have asked about, and so I wanted to just put together a video. We'll see how it goes. I have a whole slew of notes over here that I'm going to try and go through and cover on right to repair and open closed source and how they relate and maybe don't relate. And this is all my opinion. So I'm going to preface all of this with this is where I stand on this. It's an ever changing landscape. And so I just wanted to share kind of my thoughts as I'm going through and making a physical product as somebody who comes from the maker community, very DIY, very much right to repair. And so, first and foremost, what is let's start with some definitions. So what is right to repair? That's okay. I gotta get standby. I gotta get my stream going here. That should do it. There we go. Okay. So what is right to repair? This is just from I don't even know what this site is. It's .org site, but this is the general gist of it. You buy stuff, it breaks or doesn't work, right? You could throw it away and buy new stuff, but you'd rather repair it. And so let's see. The goal of our Right to Repair campaign is to give every consumer and small businesses access to the parts, tools, and service information they need to repair products so we can keep things in use and reduce waste. And so the basic premise of Right to Repair is that you bought something. I want to show you something. This is great. Because I've been working on this. This is a great combination of things that I'm working on the side. Actually, let's go full screen for this. This is my Game Boy that I have restored. It used to be all yellow. This thing is from 89, I want to say. And the gold standard of right to repair in that this thing, first of all, doesn't ever break, still works. Just go ahead and turn it on. Look at that Nintendo scrolling right there. But the idea being, you bought something, if it breaks or anything goes wrong, you should be able to fix it. And the tools and parts necessary to fix it should be available to you. A common example of this is your car. You buy it from the dealership. You can take it back to the dealership for service, but you don't necessarily have to. You can go to O'Reilly Auto Parts or AutoZone or some other place to buy readily available parts and do the work yourself or take it to a third-party mechanic. And so this idea of right to repair is not supporting planned obsolescence, where if something goes wrong, the answer is, I don't know, throw it away and buy another one. Right to repair is counter to that. It's yours, you own it, you should be able to fix it, and you should have the means to be able to fix it. And that is something that I believe very strongly in, and is something that I've designed the puck holder product around. And for those that are maybe new, this is the product that we're making. It's got an ESP32 inside. It holds a hockey puck. I got a lot of light glare here, and a little e-paper display in there. So how am I supporting right to repair? Well, the entire design of this is such that if anything breaks, there's ways to fix it. So the case is, first of all, snapped together. It's not adhesive together. So for whatever reason the case breaks, you can open it up, take the guts out of it. I can get you a new case, and you can put it in that, snap it together, you're good to go. If the display breaks, it's not something you may have heard. Apple licenses chips or has these chips through suppliers that say you need to give us the chip but not sell it to anybody else. So there are certain chips inside of MacBooks and iPhones that even if you knew how to take out and unsolder and replace, that you physically cannot get from the manufacturer because they have contracts in place with Apple to not sell them to you. This is stuff that you can look up and research. In my case, if your display breaks, you could buy a new one from the same manufacturer that I get it from, or you could send me a support thing and I'll send you the display. so that you can fix it. Same thing, battery, all of this, everything inside of here, down to the circuit board. Again, if for whatever reason the circuit board fries in this and everything else is good, the display's good, the battery's good, you could open this thing up. I will send you a new one of these and you can repair it. And so I feel like in my product, that's how I'm supporting the right to repair movement. Everything about this is repairable either by you or by me. I mean, I would even entertain the fact of like, I don't know how to repair it. Send it in to me and I'll repair it. Because I hate the idea of, oh, something's not working right or there's a pixel burnt out. Throw the whole thing in the garbage and buy a new one. Or even I'll send you a new one so they don't even have to pay for it. I hate that. And so to me, that's right to repair and how I'm trying to support it with the way I've designed my product and how I will approach customers who use my product instead of saying none of it's touchable and if you open it up, you void your warranty. Open it up if it's broken and you think you can fix it and send me an email. I'm happy to help you with that. And so that's the right to repair side. We'll go back to the screen in a second. So the thing that I get asked a lot is about the software side. So I have a bunch of software running. Let me rewind that. It's not all software, firmware, whatever. I have a bunch of repositories in GitHub to support my product. I have the firmware that runs on the ESP32. I have the hardware design files, KiCad. I have the enclosure design files. Do I even have those in a repository? Good question. I have the backend that serves up the data for the devices to display. I have the Android application repository. I have the iOS application repository. And I'm starting to have like a tools repository for things to support all of this to kind of automate parts of the business. All of that, 100% of that is closed source. And so I think the first distinction I want to make is I do not associate right to repair and open source as being one and the same, and that you can't have one without the other. I don't believe that's true. First of all, because right to repair can apply to something that's not running or involve any software. The second part of that is I don't necessarily believe that having access to the source code makes something repairable, with one exception, and that is end of life. I think, and this is something that I'm going on video and record saying, that if you go out of business, I think it would be the right thing to do by people to open source your stuff so that customers, should they choose, can continue to hack on and improve the thing that you left behind. But as long as I'm supporting this and running this, I don't feel like having access to the source code of what runs on this is part of right to repair. If there are bugs and things in this, I will fix them. And if it doesn't do what you want it to do, I don't feel like that's covered under right to repair. Like if you say, well, I don't like what it displays on the screen, I want to display something different, you can ask me as a feature request to implement that, or get yourself an ESP32, an e-paper display, and a 3D printer, and make your own version of it. And that's where I feel like those things can be separated, open, closed source versus right to repair. But let's talk about open versus closed source. And so the question I get is, am I anti-open source? And if not, why is everything related to this product closed source? And that is a very fair question, and I've got a bunch of notes here to hopefully address that. So first of all, I've got, 3 reasons here. 3 reasons why my stuff is closed source. First of all, customers don't really care. 99.9999% of consumers of a product of this nature, sports merchandise, don't care about the source code. I would venture to say most don't even know what source code is. And that's something that, as a technical person, as an engineer, and as a maker, I think a lot of people forget. To us, it's very cool to be able to look at the source code. To somebody who buys this from our website or from a team store at an NHL venue or from fanatics, they don't care. They know what it's supposed to do and they want it to do that thing. And so releasing the source code is not really something that my target audience, which is my customers, care about. They just don't. And I understand that a lot of people do care about that because they want to be able to make something similar. And so I'll cover that in parts 2 and 3. Number 2, and this is just me being very frank and honest, I'm concerned about security for the product and the customers that use it. You hear every day about Internet of Things devices being hacked and some crazy thing happening. Now, this isn't like the baby monitor where some guy is like swearing at your baby in their crib because they hacked your IoT device. I mean, at worst, I think you get like a Silicon Valley thing where you put something inappropriate on the screen that I don't want. Like that, I feel like is the bad end of what could happen with hacking these. But the second part of that is if it's totally hacked and somebody's able to swap out source code, we're talking about a device that has credentials to your Wi-Fi that if somebody could get some code on there running, could be used as an attack vector to snoop on your network and look for other things. And I would open source if I had the time and resources to have like a security audit done on my repositories by a company of, I'm talking an expensive audit of this to say, we've looked at this. Here are the things that we found that you need to address. Right now, it's me. I am the tech on this, and I've got all these repositories, and I've done my very best with my almost 2 decades of experience to make things very secure, but I don't gain a lot from open sourcing it where I could lose a ton if there is a security issue. And so the way I put this was I gain little in developer goodwill to what I could potentially lose, which is everything related to like a business lawsuit. If some crazy thing happens with the security of this and somebody sues, that's a huge problem for me. And so I'm weighing those two things of, in the worst case of a security breach, bad things happen. The best case of me open sourcing this is a few other developers and makers are happy about it. And so like, that's not a risk that I want to take. So quite frankly, I am using obscurity as a part of my security. I'm not relying on it totally. Like I said, I've tried to do my very best to make this secure, but I'm also relying on that extra obscurity of not being able to see the source code. And I've heard the argument of like, well, if it's open source, people will find those and you can fix them. I personally think that's semi-naive given the thing that I'm making. I think of it more of the people who are most likely to be interested in that are those that want to exploit it, hackers and bad actors. And so security is a concern. That's another reason I keep it closed source. And again, if I can get to a point where I feel rock solid about it and almost like I dare you to try to hack it, I'll open source it. But until then, I don't, because I don't have the resources. And number 3, I have invested almost 3 years of my time and tens of thousands of US dollars in making this product. I'm the one that stayed up all night working on bugs and solving problems and finding out what does work and doesn't work with all the different pieces of technology that I'm using. I'm the one that has made the mistakes, had the bug happen, and then had to fix it. And I think and so I'm trying to protect my investment. I mean, that's really what I'm getting at. I'm trying to establish a new market in sports merchandise. And if I were to give all of the source code out, anybody that thought it was a cool idea would be able to stand up a copycat with virtually no effort. I've made the code such that the hardware, all you would have to do is send my files to a fab house in China and you've got these. the back end, I talked about it in my postmortem. I can stand that up on any host. Like, you would take it, and in 20 minutes, somebody with the right skills could have my back end running on another hosting device. And so uh, I am concerned about that. I've done all the research. I've made all the mistakes. I've put all the money in. And now if I put it out there, and I'm not saying that this would happen, but it makes it very easy for somebody to come along that has more connections than I do, that has more funding than I do, to literally overnight, not just like overnight, figured it, like literally overnight, stand up a competitor to me. And I'm trying to protect myself from that because I don't have the means at this point um, to protect myself from that, other than keeping it to myself, so that at least, yeah, sure, somebody could buy one, open this up, look at it, but it's time, right? They would have to reverse, do their own version of this and have it, build up the board. That doesn't take a super long time. They would have to reverse engineer the firmware. Like, it's not super high, but there is a cost of entry to reproduce what I've built here over those 3 years that I feel like it would be silly of me, again, for the goodwill that I would gain from a few people, to the risk that it exposes me to. And so that's another reason why currently I have all of this stuff closed source. Okay, let's talk about. I lost my notes. So, but am I anti open source? The answer is absolutely not. I have lots of open source projects available on my GitHub. I have contributed to open source projects. I'm very much for open source. And so, how do I balance keeping my stuff closed source but being pro open source? And I came up with a few that I feel like is my way of trying to balance that, which is, one, I do these streams. Like, if you've watched for a while, I'm in the source code. Now, if you wanted to really be like, try and steal my stuff, like, there's some of these where you could probably just screen grab and like retype all the code that you see. Like, I'm not hiding the code. Like, it's in these streams and you can see the stuff, and I've worked on features on these streams. And so I'm trying to share like the design of the system and like high level architecture. Like, I'm trying to share as much as I can without saying, here's all the stuff if you wanted to try and compete directly with me. I'm trying to share for those that are interested in the technical nature of this, and, e-paper displays and ESP32. I'm trying to share as much as I can through these streams. I answer all emails and try to help where I can. For those that reach out to me directly and have specific questions, I don't, as far as I'm aware, I have never responded, sorry, can't tell you that, it's proprietary. I will share it, including schematics. I have an older version of the schematic of this that I've shared with people who have reached out and asked for it. I try to be generous with that knowledge to help other people in their projects that they're working on. The open source that I use for the product, which really is not much, I use LVGL, which is a display library for the screens, and ESP-IDF, but the whole purpose of ESP-IDF is for you to build products with the ESP32. So it's not like Espressif is harmed by me using their open source software. But when I use it, I try to contribute back to it. I have submitted pull requests to and had them accepted to the LVGL project, and have more on the feedback side of ESP-IDF, working with helping them improve that. And those open source projects, I would never modify to do something for my device and then not share it back to the community. So that's where I draw the line of open and closed source. I don't consume open source projects, modify them to do some new cool thing, and then not share that back with the community. I would share any of that back via pull requests. And so I try to balance it that way. And then finally, again, like, I'm kind of going on record here saying this, somebody can throw it in my face years down the road, but I believe in financially supporting those open source projects that I do use or will use in the future as part of my product. And so, for example, LVGL, right now we're just getting started. again, I've said this before, any money that I'm spending is coming out of my bank account. And so I'm not in a position yet. We're hoping to get there to the profitable side of things, but I am more than happy and intend to financially support the LVGL project when we start selling these. I think it's completely fair to pay them, whether that's a monthly or yearly or whatever. Thank you and support, because that's something that's enabling my product, and I believe in that a ton. I don't think there's any reason these large companies, Microsoft, Apple, they should be pumping, I'm going to say, hundreds of millions of dollars into the open source projects that they are using to advance their product lines. They can afford it, and I think it's the right thing to do. And so, because I say that, I will do that as part of my company. The open source projects that we consume to help, whether that's through tooling or like this, the display of this, I'm more than happy to financially support. In addition to, like I said, supporting via pull requests and improvements. And so that's my balance of having my stuff be closed source, but trying as best I can to support open source and give back to the community. A quick note on licenses. How are we doing on time? 21 minutes. A quick note on licenses. Somebody asked me, like, what are the things to consider when consuming open source in your product, especially when this is not like a maker project that I'm going to put on Hackster. Like, it's a product under a company that I'm selling to consumers. I did another video, and I'll try and link it up above here, where I talk about why I specifically don't like GPL and AGPL license. I call them infectious licenses. And like I said, there's a video that I did on that explains that. But there are permissive licenses and non-permissive licenses. And I'm not a license expert or attorney. I personally prefer MIT or Apache licensed projects over GPL, AGPL type licenses, just because, and again, I've had people reach out and be like, oh, you just want to steal and make money off of it. I think I'm pretty transparent that, and I've shared enough that I think it would be hard to peg me as that based on what I've put together and how I go about it. I don't believe in some of these infectious licenses where just by using, in derivative work, it gets into legal terms, but just by consuming that, you have to now turn around, and if you have come up with anything novel or original, you have to open it up under that same license. I just don't believe in that. I feel like if you consume a project that's licensed a certain way, you can honor that license within your product. And I feel like MIT and Apache do that well. I have just an example here. ESP, for example, where are we? The ESP IDF itself is Apache. You can't see that. Burp. Let's change. The ESP IDF is licensed under Apache. You can see commercial use, modification, distribution, patent use, private use. You license copyright notice. You don't have to, and again, Espressif doesn't care that you're using this. It's a means for them to sell chips, and so I think that's fine. LVGL is MIT, a short and simple permissive license with conditions only requiring preservation of copyright and license notices. Licensed works, modifications, and larger works may be distributed under different terms and without source code. And that's where I say it's a permissive license. I don't have to open source my firmware because I'm using the LVGL license. And in fact, the only modification I made to the LVGL library in my code, I submitted back as a pull request, which was accepted by the LVGL maintainers. And so again, this idea of if I'm using it and I try to make it better, I'm submitting it back. I'm not holding that on for myself. So I feel like I'm being true to the spirit of the license that this is under. An example that I cover in that other video that I'll just briefly show you, this GXEPD, which is a display library for these same e-paper displays, has this conditions of disclosing source and same license. And that's where I say it's more of an infectious license. I can't use this to just display things as one part of my product without it affecting how I license everything else. And so I would just encourage you, if you're doing your own product, research the licenses that you may be using from open source code that you're pulling into your project, and make sure you understand your legal liability there. Consult a lawyer who will charge you lots of money, but give you the the lowdown on what you need to do for your product. Okay, let's see. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I think just kind of closing up, I think right to repair and open source, closed source are separate concerns. You can have one without the other. You can have something that's extremely repairable that's closed source or open source. You can also have a completely open source product that is impossible to repair. I think if Apple open sourced all of the firmware that's running on the iPhone, it's still near impossible to repair some of those things. And so, again, I see those as separate concerns. I think you can have one without the other. Ultimately, I would love to open source everything I have. And like I say, I try to help the community as much as I can when people reach out to me. I'm just not in a position right now with the place that the business is in and how we're just getting started. Very little to gain by doing that, and a lot to lose should a bad actor or a copycat want to come along and try to do harm to the business that I'm trying to create. Again, I mean, we're early stages here, and so the risk reward matrix there just isn't present to open source all of this stuff. So, but I would say I continue to welcome questions. If you, I'll continue to show source code as we work on stuff in here. One of the things I'll just mention really quickly that I struggle with and is a huge stress, gives me a lot of anxiety, is when I'm coming through. Let's see. When I'm coming through and showing the source code that I have, I am terrified of like leaking something that could. And again, it doesn't even need to be somebody who's trying to like be malicious in that they're trying to compete and take me down. It could just be a jerk that's like, I think it would be funny to mess with Kevin. And I actually had a guy, this was several years ago. I got a text on my cell phone and said, "Hey, my name is so and so. I just wanted to let you know that you leaked your cell phone number in your latest YouTube video." And like, bless that man's heart for doing that, because if it was somebody else, it'd be like, "Oh, I'm like," and again, it's not even that people are terrible people. Like, some people are just jerks and like get a rise out of messing with people. And so, um, I immediately took the video down and I edited and I fuzzed out the part. But I'm terrified when I stream these, and that's where it stresses me out, because a lot of times I just sit down and just worry-free code, and that's why there hasn't been a lot of coding on the streams lately. It's because when I do stream, like, I have to be extra, like, I'm using mental power to work on the feature or solve the problem at hand, but then I'm using extra CPU cycles in my brain of like, don't make a mistake, don't open up like the .env file in my environment. And so like I leak all of my service keys and everything. And again, it's like, oh, you could just change those. That's just something I don't want to mess with. Like, oh geez, every time I stream, I got to go and change all of my service, like API keys and everything. And that stresses me out a lot. And so I worry about that when I do try to stream. Again, most people that I've interacted with, awesome. I love sharing with everyone and are just awesome people. It's that one jerk that ruins it for everybody, that says, "Oh, look, I got a piece of information to Kevin's account and I'm going to mess something up just to be a jerk." So anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I've had people that said my take on open source. One guy said, "I think you look at this with a very naive perspective," which, is a fine opinion to have. I would love to hear your thoughts on right to repair, on open versus closed source. Do you think I'm doing it completely wrong? Do you think I'm doing it right? Do you think I'm somewhere in between? I would love to hear thoughts on that. Hopefully this was helpful in kind of going through some of the things that you think about when you're making a product, while also coming from that background that I do, which is I'm not a cold-blooded hardcore business person that's trying to do wrong by everybody but himself. Like I'm trying to build a business, and certainly I have a financial vested interest in doing that, but I also really like to help other people move along in their journey where I can. So, anyway, that's going to do it for the stream today. I appreciate everybody who's watching this. Again, throw down in the comments any thoughts you have. Again, right to repair, open close source, what you think about how I'm doing it. Would love to hear from you. Always love to hear from everybody in the comments. And really, I feed off of that, and I love getting those. So thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.